Moment eine verheerende Situation für uns, für die Welt.
Right now, a devastating situation for us, for the world. It is happening in the context of a great economic misery here. An infinite number of individual faiths. And I wonder, where are the doctors now? As a doctor myself for 30 years, it is my wish to understand why diseases arise at all. And there's no chronic disease. We should simply treat its symptoms. More we have to take care of the things that provoke the disease in us. Because it is not faith. Everything has its causes, and they lie in us, and they lie in our own environment. As a doctor for biological medicine, it is my urgent wish to recognize those and to find ways back to health together with the patient in front of me. And therefore, it is important that we all think bigger and are aware that every virus makes us stronger. Because we only stabilize our own defenses through contact. I am very surprised that especially the generation today, the children, the teenagers, and the adults do not have this chance anymore. Such a flu wave can be stopped when the immunity in a society is restored. Remember, when we brought our children to kindergarten and the chickenpox outbreak, we deliberately brought all the other children so that these children had a lifelong protection against chickenpox. Giving an injection and knowing an antibody titer does not mean immunity. It is only contact. And please also read the numbers of those currently infected critically. 80% go through a viral infection, and that is good, because only then you can build your own antibodies. It is good to protect one or the other, especially people who are already sick or weak. But those radical implementations cannot be understood in a medical way, especially what we experience as psychological pressure, how we isolate ourselves, and that we can no longer tank the sunlight. Vitamin D is a prerequisite for building up these antibodies against a contacted virus. If we get symptoms, we get sick, and the body goes through a process. Anyone who, sadly, doesn't make it through such a flu epidemic has already an unbelievable amount of pre-strains. Does this person know them all? What strains are we humans actually under? Let me just give you a few examples so that you can see that we cannot compare China with Europe or America. And yet, here we live in a civilization that offers anything but normal living conditions. I don't have to explain that. You all know this permanent stress that we all experience every day. But we also know the big burden of electric smog. We know the big burden of air pollution. Nobody talks about it anymore. But how much cadmium do you think is in the air? Arsenic, lead, what we humans inhale. You think that doesn't matter to us? Take the light metal aluminum. Aluminum doesn't really exist in nature, it's only bonded to silicon. That's a light metal from the Earth's crust. We extract aluminum, release it from its bond, and use it in many different ways. There was the Bronze Age, then there was the Iron Age, and today it is the Aluminum Age. It's not the aluminum foil in which you put your fish and put it on the grill, or maybe keep the bread fresh. It's much more. It's in vaccination, it's in cosmetics. Every branded lipstick contains aluminum. It's in deodorant rollers. It's in the stomach pills. It's very much used in the pharmacology industry. But this aluminum doesn't belong to any metal that we have adapted to ourselves. We don't have the detoxification capabilities. Where aluminum is, aluminum stays. Silicon has bound it, and in that form it is valuable and important. We humans have the unbound form in us, and aluminum does something to us. It's only a matter of time. How long can I tolerate this as a human being? You don't have to put your cell phone to your ear to open the blood-brain barrier. Aluminum can pass through you unhindered. Today we know that dementia can be traced back to 4 causes. If we can identify them in time, we will have good progress in medical treatment. My colleague Dr. Bredesen has become outstanding in this diagnosis and has many study cases to present. Aluminum is a part of dementia. You can also call it Alzheimer's disease. Do we actually take care of it in time? Aluminum blocks our immune defenses. Aluminum can block our temperature behavior. Your immune system has only one task, 24 hours a day, to protect you. By the way, that is in nature's plan. And you need this unrestricted flow of all these protective functions. But aluminum blocks these natural regulations. A temperature increase of 1 to 2 degrees Celsius alone triggers an immense clearing in our body. Parasites, viruses, bacteria. I'm always shocked that people tell me, I haven't had a fever for over 10 years and I always felt so healthy. All of a sudden a diagnosis appears and you don't understand the world anymore. Suddenly, your body can't handle a seemingly harmless thing. We have to look deeper, and we have to think bigger, and we have to consider our environment above all. I ask you all to read Rachel Carson's book on herbicides written in the 1960s. Whoever starts with herbicides destroys the very foundation of life, and with them, life. We all consume only cereals, fruits, vegetables, which was treated with herbicides and pesticides. But once the bee is off the ground, humans only maybe have 4 years left for a livelihood. No bee, no pollination of plants, no plants, no food for humans and animals. About 30% of these bee colonies are already gone. That is our responsibility, we humans. The current flu epidemic, which is currently spreading from one to another, is also due to the fact that we can only build up immunity through contact, but it does not in any way represent the seriousness of a large number of diseases. If you do a virus test and say that you have been in contact with the virus, it does not mean that everyone will get sick and even die. No, it is actually good to have contact, to build up this antibody. It makes you stronger for the future. But if we don't take care of it anymore, and I would also like to address my colleagues here, it is an absolute must at this time to know the vitamin D level of our patients, and always in October at the latest. 100,000 immune reactions depend on it. And the hormone, vitamin D, the most vital hormone in our body, is formed from cholesterol, the most vital building material, but it needs light, sunlight. Which children still play outside today? Which offices still have effective daylight? Which sales assistant and which other professions do not see daylight for over 8 hours a day? People who live in an area in the world that does not have many sunny hours can no longer create these reserves, and we simply have to deal with it. What we know from thousands of studies is that low vitamin D levels promote viral reactivations. We know 30% of tumors wouldn't be tumors if vitamin D was okay. Why are we all so terribly anxious? Are we distracted by something? There was a congress in Germany last year on electric smoke. You know, many radio masts were set up in this Chinese city where it all began, and people who live there in this enormous pollution became ill. Is it corona? Or is it the lack of my resistance? On this congress I mentioned, I was allowed to prepare a workshop with my dear colleague. In this workshop we did the following. We have taken the blood of patients, looked at this blood under a microscope and evaluated it for its vitality. You can see how the red blood cells, our oxygen carriers, actively float around. You can also see how the white leukocytes, our first immune defense, is ready and takes care of everything in the blood and tissue in a very strong activity. Now, the phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means that they are the one that clean up and clean the blood and tissue from bacteria and viruses. This army has to be ready. This army has to be ready 24 hours a day. This is living. But is our life and is our body even adapted? First we saw the blood on the microscope, and then we took a second blood sample in a normal serum tube. We took those blood samples and put them in a room which was prepared for this purpose and which was now exposed to Wi-Fi for 1 hour. When I presented the results at this congress, I think I could have dropped a needle and hear the drop. The audience felt how horrified I was and how worried. The leukocytes stopped working. They were there, but they stopped working. What does this actually mean for us humans? A laboratory in Berlin, Germany also sent me back all the results. The result of this experiment was that all white blood cells were exposed to high oxidative stress. The audience felt my concern, and I also noticed at that moment that they were all very much affected. We humans usually do not feel anything about this. We do not hear it, smell, or taste it. But it is simply a fact. Nobody feels it, but the sugar metabolism is levered out, the blood-brain barrier is opened, and our autonomy will no longer respond in an adapted way. When I say our autonomy, I mean our autonomic nervous system, which controls us 99% unconsciously. This autonomic nervous system is responsible to produce white blood cells when pathogens want to spread in our blood. Or if I now have to perform in any way, I have to run, have to climb, whatever. The energy is maneuvered there through the autonomic nervous system. It will also produce enough hormones, for example, if I want to become a pregnant woman. Autonomy is responsible in our body for the fact that there's homeostasis in our body. Do you really believe that we humans are able to understand that only one cell performs 30,000 enzymatic reactions per second? Do you believe that this is even possible for our human senses to perceive what this miracle body can do? The life in us is bound to a great order, but this life wants to be protected. If we all do not start to become more humble and commit ourselves to protect the health of all others, including ourselves, then this life on this earth will have development and a future. Dealing with this pandemic, as it is called, is our fault. And I love Franz Kuber's sentence, "Illness is a symptom of a lost life. It slows down the pace of wrong movements, because only a slowed down life finds its way back. The body refuses superficiality, and this forces life into the deep. A mini-monster virus has existed for millions of years. We have only been able to recognize viruses since the 19th century, when the microscope was invented. They are fragments of cells. They have only one protein structure. They have only one RNA or DNA, the ribonucleic acid, and they have one capsule. They are not viable without the human cell. Do you really think this big epidemic is caused by this little mini-monster? We are doing these studies here because I want to know why people get sick. We test for toxic metals, we test for herbicides and pesticides. We test for detoxification capacity. We check why one person is sick from the mercury on their mouth and develops Parkinson, and why another person can smoke until they are old and remain in perfect health. That is the key. We must finally tackle the causes of disease. I am now digressing, but I would like to make you aware that we are now experiencing an incomprehensible situation from a medical point of view.
nachvollziehende Situation erleben, die auch wirtschaftlich. Und ich weiß nicht, wie viele Seelen.
From an economic point of view, I don't know how many souls are now broken. How families are faced with tasks they cannot accomplish. It bleeds my heart how we treat our old people. They also need sun. They also want to stay strong. We isolate them. It is not fair what we are doing. It's not loving what we do. And that's why it's important, and it's my appeal to you as human being, but also to the medicine. We all need each other. We need the wonderful diagnostics and we need the surgery. We can do great things, and I'm proud of my colleagues in the emergency medicine who make incredible things possible. But the basis today is 70% chronic disease, and we simply do not question this. The basis is a medicine that has to take care of everything, but not of diseases, but of those who are ill. There are 7 billion people on this earth? No. There are 7 billion times 1. And each one is unique. And it's not about making something easier what is difficult, but it is about being honest and truthful now and understanding what life needs and what it needs from us. That's why I call and appeal to people, colleagues, and you. Measure your vitamin D level. To my colleagues, prescribe high-dose vitamin C, oral 2000 milligram, by infusion 7 to 15 gram. With L-leucine in combination with zinc, you can help stem the development of the virus. But give the body the chance to build up a defense. Otherwise, we will face that same problem in the near future again. We humans must become stronger. We must take care of ourselves, and above all, we humans have the responsibility for ourselves. That is self-evident. You decide what you do. You also decide what you buy. You also decide what you don't buy. You decide how often you have to travel around the world and whether you still want to go on holiday with a big cruise ship. You can decide all that yourself. But I also feel responsibility for my patient, and I will make sure that they get stability. Socrates once said that if a patient does not want to change his life, we must not help him as a doctor. And that is why every patient is never a victim. He's always the master of his conditions, and he must take it into his hands, because it is his disease. It's his tumor. It's his Parkinson's. And please believe me, everything has a cause. And our microcosm is no different than the macrocosm out there. With this having said, I would like to come to an end. And I sincerely hope that you will join me in initiating a paradigm shift in medicine as well. One still speaks of alternative or functional medicine, but this is the great holistic view of doctors whose view is great but also deep. Their view is humble and respectful of life. We doctors, we cannot heal. Our body can heal if we always help him to do so. And the human body has been incredibly burdened and overloaded for over 70 years now. My last and final appeal: please do not allow 5G to be installed. Watch the film Thank You for Calling by Klaus Scheidsteger. It's available in English. I appeal to life, and I appeal to your good sense. Thank you.